Good evening, listeners. You must have heard of Keller's tragic story. How easily could one's reckless actions destroy a family? Our field reporter, Dan Gabazon, met Andy Eva, and here is her story.
The victim is Joe Keller, a 60-year-old man. Joe was found dead in his house a few days ago. The police haven't yet discovered the causes for the traumatic death. Joe was married to Kate Keller. He was a father of two grown sons. The first son is Chris Keller, an unmarried man. The older son, Larry Keller, served as a pilot in World War II, and he was missing for 3 years. During the war, Keller's Endeavor's manufacturing plant had a very profitable contract with the US Army, supplying airplane parts. One morning, a shipment of defective parts came in. Keller told Steve to weld the cracks in the airplane parts and ship them out. Hello, Anne. How are you?
Hello, Dan. Thank you. I'm still shocked by the recent events.
Would you mind telling us your side in this tragic story?
Yes, I have some information that I would like to share. My story took place on November 25th, 3 years ago. It was the day Larry went missing. I was his girlfriend at this time.
I have no doubt that it was tough for you all, living without knowing what happened to Larry, whether he was alive or not.
I was devastated. My dad underwent a trial and then was sent to jail. Later, I moved to New York. I could not stand the negative voices regarding my father's action back then. Several years had passed and I decided to come back because of Chris.
Could you please elaborate?
Chris and I wrote to each other for a very long time. He invited me to stay over for a few days so we could tell his parents about our future plans.
I understand that you dated both Chris and Larry. I don't want to sound rude, but don't you think it's wrong dating Larry's brother?
I did not plan that. You see, Kate couldn't handle Larry's disappearance. She was absolutely certain that he would come back. Kate considered my return as a sign that Larry is still alive. Thus, Chris and I wanted Joe's support to get Kate's permission to marry.
Did Joe help you?
Well, not exactly. Things got even worse when Kate found out that we were willing to marry. She refused to acknowledge the possibility that her son might be dead. At that moment, I knew I had to show
Show
them.
them what?
This!
What is this?
It's a suicide letter. I received it a few weeks after Larry was reported missing.
Suicide?
Larry was a pilot. He could not deal with the fact that his father's company was responsible for the death of 21 pilots. In his letter, he wrote that his father Joe ruined his life. It didn't matter to him that the pilots who died were not from his unit. He was so disappointed because of his dad, so he decided to take his own life. He wrote that I shouldn't wait for him. Well, Joe had to live with the guilt that was eating him up alive.
The guilt? But he was exonerated. He was not in the factory when the cylinder heads were sent out.
Well, that's true, but Joe was definitely involved in that case. He was the man who told the workers to ship those defected cylinder heads. When Joe read the Chris letter, he could not live anymore. He executed a suicide. I was on the porch with Mrs. Keller and Chris when we all heard a gunshot. I never wanted this to happen.
I am stunned. Not only did Joe Keller committed a suicide, but he was also responsible for the death of the 21 pilots. I do not understand. Why waiting so long to show the letter to the Kellers?
I had to make sure that Joe's involvement in that case was true. I knew that Joe's involvement wouldn't ease my dad's sentence, but it's still a matter of principle. We have to pay for our crimes. And as for the letter, it took me a long time to accept it. I didn't want to send it to the Kellers. I had to come here myself to do it. But again, it was difficult.
Miss Deaver, unfortunately we have to finish. Thank you for talking with us on such short notice. We appreciate the fact that you shared the truth with us.
Thank you, Dan. Now I have to go check on Mrs. Keller and Chris. I'm sure they need me.
Well, listeners, I'm sure that our interview with Miss Deaver makes us all think again. We wish Miss Deaver all the best and thanks her for cooperating with us.
This broadcast was brought to you by Dan Gabazon. All rights reserved by SD News, and content may not be reproduced.